The 70s were a bold era for cinematic experimentation, particularly in fantasy. Filmmakers blended folklore, epic quests, and bizarre visions in ways that often caught viewers off guard. Many of these movies slipped into the shadows, eclipsed by major releases, but they pulse with an ingenuity and daring that's hard to find now. Let's explore 10 overlooked fantasy treasures from the 70s that merit a real revival. 10. Bedknobs and Broomsticks. Bedknobs and Broomsticks is one of the most charming yet surprisingly underrated fantasy films of the 1970s, directed by Robert Stevenson for Disney. Angela Lansbury gives a radiant performance as Miss Eglantine Price, a quirky, middle-aged spinster living in a quiet English village during World War II. She's secretly studying witchcraft through a mail-order course, hoping to master a spell that can help stop the Nazi invasion. When three evacuated children from London, clever but cynical Charlie, his optimistic sister Carrie, and imaginative little Paul arrive at her doorstep, they discover her magical secret. Together, they embark on a quest to find the missing spell substitutionary locomotion, which can bring inanimate objects to life. The film is a dazzling mix of live action and classic Disney animation. The magical flying bed takes them soaring over London, into an underwater ballroom where sea creatures dance the waltz, and even into a Nazi-occupied town where museum armor and suits of armor come alive to fight German soldiers. The animation sequences, especially the beautiful briny underwater dance, are breathtaking, using the same hybrid techniques perfected in Mary Poppins. The Sherman Brothers soundtrack is unforgettable, with catchy songs like The Old Home Guard, Portobello Road, and The Beautiful Briny that instantly stick in your head. Beneath the whimsy, there's real heart. Eglantine isn't a powerful witch. She's a flawed, ordinary woman who doubts herself but keeps going. The children aren't perfect either. Charlie is suspicious, Paul is dreamy, Carrie tries to hold everyone together. Their journey creates a genuine found family story set against the backdrop of wartime England. Production was ambitious, filmed on real English locations with massive matte paintings, elaborate underwater sets, and hand-drawn animation integrated seamlessly. Lansbury, in one of her first major film roles, brings warmth, humor, and quiet strength. At release, it was often compared unfavorably to Mary Poppins and didn't get the attention it deserved. But over time, its unique blend of magic, adventure, and subtle anti-war themes has made it a beloved cult favorite. In an era dominated by CGI blockbusters, Bedknobs and Broomsticks stands out as a reminder of the power of practical effects, hand-drawn animation, and heartfelt storytelling. It's the perfect family fantasy with depth. Rediscover it, and that flying bed will still make you smile. 9. Zardoz, 1974. Zardoz is John Boorman's wildly ambitious, psychedelic, and utterly bizarre fantasy epic from 1974. A film so strange it feels like it was beamed in from another dimension. Sean Connery stars as Zed, a muscular, savage exterminator in a post-apocalyptic world divided between brutal outsiders and the immortal, decadent Eternals who live inside a protective dome called the Vortex. The film opens with a giant floating stone head named Zardoz descending from the sky, proclaiming, "The gun is good, the penis is evil," and raining firearms down on the wasteland tribes. Zed, driven by curiosity and rage, hides inside the head and infiltrates the vortex, where he discovers a society of bored immortals who have lost all purpose, trapped in endless hedonism, telepathic games, and artificial immortality. Boorman's vision is a chaotic blend of sword and sorcery, science fiction, philosophy, and satire. Imagine Conan the Barbarian crashing into Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Crystal palaces, floating statues, orgies, libraries that drive people mad, and Connery running around in nothing but a red loincloth and thigh-high boots. The film is packed with surreal imagery, slow-motion horse rides, time distortions, superimposed visions, and a hypnotic rhythm created by David Munro's haunting flute and drum score. It asks big questions. What happens when immortality kills desire? Who is truly free, the savage or the enlightened elite?
Filmed in the lush, mystical landscapes of Ireland, Zardoz was a personal passion project for Boorman after Deliverance. He convinced 20th Century Fox to fund his vision, but the studio was horrified by the final cut. Too weird, too philosophical, too naked. Critics called it pretentious or incomprehensible, and it flopped commercially. Yet, over the years, it has built a devoted cult following, praised by filmmakers like David Lynch and musicians from David Bowie to Nine Inch Nails. Connery's fearless performance and Boorman's refusal to explain anything make it unforgettable. In today's world of high-concept dystopias like The Boys and Westworld, Zardoz feels ahead of its time, bold, provocative, and unapologetically strange. If you crave fantasy that challenges and unsettles, this is the one to rediscover. Number 8. The Land That Time Forgot, 1974. The Land That Time Forgot is a pure, unpretentious pulp adventure that perfectly captures the 1970s love for lost world fantasies. Directed by Kevin Connor and based on Edgar Rice Burroughs' novel, the story begins in 1916 during World War I. A German U-boat captures a British merchant ship, but after a betrayal and a violent storm, both crews are shipwrecked on the mysterious island of Caprona, a place where time has stood still. Dinosaurs roam jungles, primitive humans battle giant beasts, and evolution seems to run in reverse. Doug McClure plays Tyler, the resourceful American engineer who must lead the survivors through pterodactyl attacks, cave bear chases, and volcanic eruptions to find a way home. The film's joy is in its straightforward thrills: stop-motion dinosaurs created by Roger Deakins, who later worked on Alien, real pyrotechnics for explosions, and matte paintings that make the island feel vast and ancient. There are submarine battles, sword fights with lizard men, and a thrilling climax involving a makeshift airplane. The score by Douglas Gamley is grand and heroic, perfectly matching the sense of discovery and danger. Underneath the adventure, there's a subtle message about war's futility. Enemies must unite against the island's chaos or they'll all die. Amicus Productions, known for horror anthologies, took a big swing of fantasy here. The low-budget shows and some rubber suits and model work, but the earnest performances, especially McClure's charisma and John McEnery's conflicted German captain, make it feel genuine. Critics dismissed it as cheesy B-movie stuff, and it never got the wide release it deserved, but drive-in audiences loved the spectacle. Filming in Dorset quarries and on soundstages added real grit and atmosphere. Today, in the age of polished CGI like Jurassic World, The Land That Time Forgot offers something refreshing: honest, practical effects, a sense of wonder, and no pretension. It's the perfect retro adventure for family viewing or nostalgic marathons. Rediscover it and you'll feel like a kid again. Number 7. At the Earth's Core, 1976. At the Earth's Core is a delightful, unpretentious pulp fantasy adventure that perfectly captures the 1970s fascination with lost world and subterranean wonders. Directed by Kevin Connor and based on Edgar Rice Burroughs' novel, the film follows Dr. Abner Carey, a wonderfully eccentric Peter Cushing, and his young American partner David Innes, Doug McClure in his second Burroughs role, as they test a massive mechanical iron mold drilling machine designed to bore through the Earth's crust. What begins as a scientific experiment turns into an extraordinary journey when the machine breaks through into Pellucidar, a vast hollow inner world lit by an eternal central sun, where time feels suspended and evolution has taken strange backward paths. They emerge into a landscape of jungles, oceans, and towering crystals, populated by primitive human tribes, telepathic pterodactyl-like Mahars who enslave Lizard-Ven, and monstrous creatures like saber-toothed cats and giant snakes. David quickly becomes the reluctant hero, fighting to free the slaves and protect the beautiful Dia, Cindy O'Callaghan, while Abner's Victorian curiosity clashes hilariously with the dangers around them. The film is packed with classic adventure beats: cave explorations lit by glowing fungi, battles with crossbow-wielding lizard men, a thrilling escape across an underground sea, and a climactic showdown with the Mahar Queen. The effects are pure 70s charm, rubber-suited monsters, stop-motion creatures, and elaborate matte-painted skies that make Pellucidar feel alien and ancient. The production design is impressive for the budget. Massive cave sets built at Shepperton Studios, real pyrotechnics for volcanic eruptions, and clever use of forced perspective to create scale. Mike Vicker's score mixes orchestral swells with eerie, otherworldly tones that heighten the sense of wonder and peril. Released as part of Amicus's attempt to capitalize on the success of The Land That Time Forgot, it was dismissed by critics as cheesy B-movie nonsense and never got wide promotion. But audiences who caught it on TV or at drive-ins loved its earnest energy, Cushing's twinkling performance, he improvised many of his witty lines, and McClare's square-jawed heroism. Filming anecdotes are full of fun. Peter Cushing kept the cast laughing between takes, and the cave sets were so convincing that extras got genuinely lost. In today's world of polished CGI spectacles, At the Earth's Core offers something refreshing: practical effects, genuine excitement, and a sense of discovery that feels handmade and heartfelt. It's the perfect retro fantasy for anyone who loves Verne, Burroughs, or simply a good old-fashioned adventure. Dig deep and rediscover the magic beneath the surface.
Number 6. Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, 1977. Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger is Ray Harryhausen's final Sinbad adventure, and one of the most visually spectacular fantasy films of the 1970s, a dazzling blend of myth, swashbuckling action, and groundbreaking stop-motion effects that absolutely deserves a modern revival. Patrick Wayne stars as Sinbad, the legendary sailor of Baghdad, who sets sail with Princess Farah, a luminous Jane Seymour, and her cursed brother Prince Qasim, who has been transformed into a baboon by an evil sorceress. Their quest? To reach the frozen north and reverse the curse, battling a bronze mechanical minotaur, a giant walrus-man hybrid, a swarm of killer bees, and troglodyte warriors along the way. The film is a treasure trove of Harryhausen's dynamation technique. The Minotaur's fluid sword fights, the Walrus Man's lumbering menace, the bee swarm's buzzing terror, all created by animating puppets frame by frame and seamlessly compositing them into live-action footage. Every creature feels alive and tactile, from the Minotaur's glowing red eyes to the troglodyte's primitive rage. Director Sam Wanamaker gives the film epic scope, shot in the deserts of Jordan, the coasts of Malta, and Pinewood Studios, with lavish costumes, jewel-toned sets, and sweeping location photography that makes every journey feel grand. Miklos Rosa's orchestral score adds a mythic Arabian Nights atmosphere, swelling during battles and turning tender during romantic moments. The story is classic Sinbad: riddles, betrayals, magical artifacts, and a climactic confrontation in an icy cavern where good triumphs over evil. Behind the scenes, Harryhausen spent months perfecting the bee sequence alone, pushing stop motion to its limits. The cast is strong. Patrick Wayne brings earnest charm, Jane Seymour is radiant, and Patrick Troughton, Doctor Who's second Doctor, adds gravitas as the villainous uncle. Columbia Pictures released it in the summer of 1977, right as Star Wars was dominating theaters, and it was overshadowed despite positive word of mouth from fantasy fans. Critics called it old-fashioned compared to the new space opera, but its practical effects and sense of wonder have aged beautifully. In an era when CGI dominates, Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger reminds us of the artistry of handcrafted creatures and real locations. It's a film that feels tailor-made for rediscovery. Sail with Sinbad once more, and let those stop-motion wonders transport you back to a time when fantasy felt truly magical.
Number 5. Jabberwocky, 1977. Jabberwocky is Terry Gilliam's dark, grotesque, and hilariously subversive medieval fantasy, a Monty Python-style fever dream that turns Arthurian legend upside down and deserves a fresh audience. Michael Palin stars as Dennis Cooper, a timid Cooper son who inherits his father's business just as the kingdom is plagued by the monstrous Jabberwocky dragon. The film follows Dennis's reluctant rise from humble tradesman to accidental hero as he navigates a filthy, plague-ridden medieval world of greedy kings, incompetent knights, scheming merchants, and a peasant uprising. Along the way, he encounters a beautiful princess, Deborah Follander, a band of drunken knights, and the terrifying Jabberwocky itself, a massive, scaly puppet with glowing eyes and a taste for human flesh. Gilliam's direction is anarchic and visually inventive. The world is grimy, muddy, and absurdly detailed. Castles with leaking roofs, peasants covered in boils, knights in rusted armor who can barely lift their swords. The humor is dark and Python-esque. Decapitations played for laughs, a princess with a boil-covered suitor, and a tournament where knights fall off horses before the fight even starts. The Jabberwocky sequence is a masterpiece of practical effects. Puppeteered by Gilliam's team, it lumbers through forests, breathes fire, real pyrotechnics, and feels genuinely menacing. The score by De Wolf is quirky and medieval, with flutes and lutes underscoring the absurdity. Filmed on location in Wales and at Shepperton Studios, the production embraced messiness, real mud, real rain, and improvised chaos. Palin's performance is pitch perfect, earnest, bewildered, and quietly brave, making Dennis the perfect anti-hero for Gilliam's satire of chivalry, class, and heroism. Released after Monty Python and the Holy Grail, it was dismissed by some as more of the same, but its darker tone and visual ambition set it apart. Critics were divided. Some loved the satire, others found it too gross, but cult audiences embraced it. In today's world of grim-dark fantasy like Game of Thrones, Jabberwocky's blend of humor, horror, and social commentary feels fresh and relevant. It's a film that refuses to play by the rules, slay the dragon, embrace the absurdity, and rediscover one of Gilliam's most underrated gems.
4. Wizards, 1977. Wizards is Ralph Bakshi's ambitious, rotoscoping-heavy, post-apocalyptic fantasy epic from 1977, a visually stunning and politically charged film that absolutely deserves a modern high-definition revival and wider appreciation. The story takes place thousands of years after a nuclear apocalypse has wiped out most of humanity, leaving a world where magic has returned and fairy-like races, elves, fairies, gnomes, coexist with mutants and humans. Twin elven wizards, the Avatar, voiced by Bob Holt, and his evil brother Black Wolf, Steve Gravers, represent the two paths forward, one of harmony with nature, the other of domination through technology. Black Wolf has rediscovered Nazi propaganda films and uses them to brainwash his mutant army, creating a fascist empire that threatens the last remnants of good. Avatar, reluctantly, must leave his peaceful fairy sanctuary to find a hero who can stop his brother. He recruits the scrappy elf Weehawk, Mark Hamill in an early role, the fairy princess Eleanor, and the assassin, Peace, Jesse Wells. Bakshi's animation style is revolutionary and raw. He used rotoscoping, tracing over live-action footage, to give the characters fluid, lifelike movement, combined with hand-painted watercolor backgrounds, detailed ink work, and surreal transitions. The film blends beauty and brutality. Lush fairy forests contrast with bombed-out ruins, Nazi tanks roll alongside dragons, and fairy magic clashes with machine guns. The themes are unapologetically adult: fascism, ecological collapse, the seductive danger of technology, and the cost of war. The voice cast adds personality: Hamill's earnest Weehawk, Richard Romanus's gruff Peace, and the haunting narration by the fairies themselves. The soundtrack by Bob Arbicer mixes folk, synth, and orchestral elements to create a trippy, otherworldly atmosphere. Production was a grueling passion project. Bakshi traced real footage of actors, including himself, from many scenes, pushed rotoscoping to its limits, and incorporated World War II newsreels for Black Wolf's propaganda sequences, a bold move that made the film feel prophetic.
20th Century Fox released it with little fanfare, overshadowed by Star Wars, and critics were divided. Some praised the artistry, others called it chaotic or pretentious. But underground screenings and later home video built a devoted cult following among animation fans and those who love mature fantasy. In today's landscape of politically charged animation like Arcane, The Boys, or Invincible, Wizards feels ahead of its time, daring, visually inventive, and unafraid to tackle big ideas. It's a film that rewards rewatching, and with a proper remaster, it could finally get the recognition it deserves. Step into this strange, beautiful world. The battle between magic and machine is still worth fighting.
Number 3. The Hobbit, 1977. The Hobbit is Rankin Bass's animated adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's classic, a warm, folkloric fantasy that captures the spirit of the book with charm, music, and a sense of wonder that makes it a perfect candidate for rediscovery. Orson Bean voices Bilbo Baggins, the comfortable, middle-aged hobbit who is unexpectedly swept into adventure when Gandalf the Wizard, John Huston, and 13 Dwarfs led by Thorin Oakenshield, Hans Conried, arrive at his door seeking help to reclaim the treasure guarded by the dragon Smaug. The journey takes them through the Shire, over the Misty Mountains, into Goblin tunnels, past Gollum's riddle game, and across Mirkwood, where giant spiders, enchanted streams, and the mysterious wood elves await. The film is a beautiful blend of cell animation and limited stop motion, especially for Gollum and some creatures, with a distinctive storybook look, soft watercolor backgrounds, expressive character designs, and a cozy, almost nostalgic tone. Maury Law's score is a highlight. Folk-inspired songs like The Greatest Adventure, The Road Goes Ever On, and Down Down to Goblin Town are sung by Glenn Yarbrough and add emotional depth, turning the journey into a musical odyssey. The voice cast is excellent. Huston's commanding Gandalf, Conried's proud Thorin, and Bilbo's perfectly pitched Bilbo, timid yet brave, ordinary yet heroic. Rankin Bass, known for Christmas specials, brought their signature warmth to Tolkien's world. The film emphasizes Bilbo's growth, the camaraderie of the dwarves, and the quiet magic of Middle-earth. Production mixed American and Japanese animation teams, creating a unique patchwork style that feels handcrafted. Released as a TV movie in 1977, it was criticized by some purists for condensing the book and simplifying the tone, but it introduced millions of children to Tolkien before the live-action trilogy. In today's post-Lord of the Rings era, it stands as a charming, faithful prelude, shorter, sweeter, and full of heart. Rediscover it with a new generation. The road still goes ever on. Number 2. Watership Down, 1978. Watership Down is Martin Rosen's haunting, unflinching animated adaptation of Richard Adams' novel, a dark, poetic fantasy that treats rabbits as complex, heroic beings and deserves far wider recognition as one of the boldest animated films of the 1970s. The story follows a small band of rabbits led by the visionary Fiber, voiced by Richard Briers, who has prophetic dreams of their warren's destruction. When the group flees, they face predators, hostile rabbit warrens, traps, and the tyrannical General Woundwort, John Hurt, of the militaristic Ephrafa. Along the way, they encounter the Black Rabbit of Inlay, the Rabbit Grim Reaper, mythical stories of El Arraida, the trickster, and the brutal realities of survival in the wild. The animation is breathtaking. Watercolor backgrounds of the English countryside turn nightmarish with blood, hawk attacks, and snare traps. The rabbits are expressive and realistic, their movements based on live rabbits filmed for reference. The film doesn't shy away from violence. Rabbits are killed on screen, throats torn, bodies left in the grass. But it's never gratuitous. It's part of the story's raw honesty about nature, migration, and freedom. Angela Morley's score is sublime. Celtic flutes, choral chants, and orchestral swells that give the journey mythic weight. The voice cast is stellar. John Hurt as the fierce Woundwort, Zero Mostel as the comic gull Cahar, and Michael Graham Cox as the wise bigwig.
Production was ambitious and difficult, filmed in England with live rabbits for motion reference, hand-painted backgrounds, and a commitment to staying true to Adams' ecological and philosophical themes. Released in 1978, it shocked audiences. Many parents were outraged that a cartoon about bunnies was so graphic, leading to limited distribution and controversy. But adults praised its maturity and emotional depth. Over time, it became a cult classic, influencing everything from Redwall to modern animal epics like The Plague Dogs, also by Rosen. In an era of eco-conscious storytelling, Watership Down feels urgent and timeless, a meditation on home, courage, and the cost of freedom. Burrow deep into this masterpiece. It's darker than you remember and more beautiful.
Number 1. The Rescuers, 1977. The Rescuers tops the list as Disney's plucky, heartfelt mouse espionage fantasy, an underdog tale that's long overdue for a proper revival and rediscovery. Directed by Wolfgang Reitherman, it follows Bernard, voiced by Bob Newhart, and Miss Bianca, Eva Gaber, members of the Rescue Aid Society, a secret organization of mice who help those in need. When they receive a message in a bottle from an orphaned girl named Penny, held captive in the Devil's Bayou by the greedy swamp witch Madame Medusa, Geraldine Page, they set off on a dangerous mission. With the help of the albatross Wilbur, a dragonfly, and a ragtag group of swamp creatures, they must rescue Penny and stop Medusa's plan to steal a legendary diamond from a pirate cave guarded by crocodiles. The film is a perfect mix of adventure, suspense, and warmth. The animation is fluid and expressive. Bernard's timid heroism, Bianca's elegant courage, and Medusa's over-the-top villainy are brought to life with classic Disney charm. The swamp sequences are atmospheric, with glowing fireflies, misty waters, and thrilling chases. Songs like Someone's Waiting for You, sung by Shelby Flint, and Rescue Aid Society are tender and memorable, adding emotional depth to the action. The voice cast shines. Newhart's nervous Bernard, Gaber's sophisticated Bianca, and Page's deliciously wicked Medusa. Released during Disney's dark ages between the classic era and the Renaissance, it was somewhat overshadowed by Star Wars and other blockbusters, but it charmed audiences with its optimism and underdog spirit. Production highlights include innovative mouse skin sets and detailed swamp environments that feel alive. In today's world of family adventures like Encanto or The Bad Guys, The Rescuers offers something timeless, a story of bravery in small packages, friendship across differences, and hope in the darkest places. Rediscover it, let the mice run, and you'll remember why Disney's little heroes still matter. The 70s were a bold era for cinematic experimentation, particularly in fantasy. Filmmakers blended folklore, epic quests, and bizarre visions in ways that often caught viewers off guard. Many of these movies slipped into the shadows, eclipsed by major releases, but they pulse with an ingenuity and daring that's hard to find now. Let's explore 10 overlooked fantasy treasures from the 70s that merit a real revival.